Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always is...
You think you're God? I'll show you God! Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we are talking about Hollow Man, released August 4th, the year 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that about?
It's gonna be 23 years old next year.
Well, we're closer to the 22-year point.
I know.
But I remember seeing this when it first came out.
I did not.
Because it was kind of a big deal at the time.
Was it?
I think, well, no, because wasn't it the budget for this movie was insane, was it not?
Yes, and also the everything that I saw covering the movie was about kind of like the groundbreaking CGI of it all. I don't know how many like HBO Closer Look or whatever, whatever kind of like Showtime Spotlight, like whatever they do. We're focusing on interviews with the actors, interviews with Paul Verhoeven, all discussing, and just like shot after shot after shot of the Isabel anatomy scene,
The gorilla,
so,
yeah.
The gorilla.
For anyone, before you get into your premise, just for anyone who's not familiar, this is like the remake of The Invisible Man before the Blumhouse Invisible Man came out.
Yeah.
So this is the very late 90s, early 2000s Invisible Man.
It's got that late 90s Paul Verhoeven feel too.
Is that how you say it? Paul Verhoeven?
That's how I've heard it said. That's how I've
I just want to as one word, like Paul Verhoeven.
Paul Verhoeven. It's just got a natural kind of a cadence to it.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven, who is very well known for his 90s movies, which ranged from Total Recall to Basic Instinct to Showgirls to Starship Troopers.
Which I still have not seen.
And there's probably another one in there that I'm missing. Because there was like 6 that are really well known. Because there's this one as well.
Yeah, he was a heavy hitter in the 90s for sure.
And this was the last one before he kind of disappeared, we'll say.
Yeah.
Or just stopped being so mainstream. What was the other one?
He had a comeback
RoboCop.
With,
that was the first one. So that was like late 80s.
Yeah. Right.
Did he have a comeback?
No, he had a comeback with a movie he directed with, I'm forgetting her name, the French actress, the one everybody loves. Can't remember her name right now, but it made like the indie film circuit, and I think she got like a nomination for an Oscar. Why am I blanking on her name? Anyway, sorry if anybody's going crazy, like screaming her name at at your phone or whatever device you're listening to us on. Like I'll know it later, I guess.
Anyway, please grace us with a premise for Hollow Man, if you will.
After years of experimentation, brilliant but arrogant scientist Sebastian Kane has discovered a way to make matter invisible. Determined to achieve the ultimate breakthrough, Kane pushes his team to move to the next phase, using himself as the subject. The test is a success, but when the process can't be reversed, and Kane seems doomed to future without flesh, he begins to show some unexpected side effects of his extraordinary condition as Hollow Man.
I didn't even write that one. That was written by Nick Cat on IMDb.
Nick Cat?
I just liked it. Yeah, thanks, Nick Cat.
Well, I mean, he does have his flesh. It's just hidden.
Oh boy.
He even still has his hair too, because when the blood like gets splashed on him, you can kind of make it out.
I think future without flesh, like I think they're alluding to also just like the fact that his eyelids still exist, but the fact that he can close his eyes but still see, it's without flesh. It's as if he were living without flesh. So.
I get it. I'm just nitpicky because technicalities.
I know.
What's okay? Like briefly, like what's your takeaway with this movie? What's your relationship with it?
Well, my history. Actually, this was one of those movies that because I still lived with my sister at the time, and I heavily associated this film with her because she brought it into my life. She was the one who watched it, and for some reason was totally all about it. I think because she didn't mind horror that wasn't that scary. I was looking for more hard-hitting kind of, even in everything, in my drama, in my any genre I was watching. I wanted kind of like, realism, something that didn't feel like, a popcorn movie. I wasn't really into popcorn movies in the year 2000. So I watched it with her and thought, oh my God. My dad was really into it too. I think he taped it on VHS for her. And, so that was my beginning. And then I think when you and I were working on Fright Club, I had to watch it repeatedly to put together scripts and whatever to collaborate with you so I would get the references you made, and I ended up having a really, really good time with it. Actually, I remembered for what it was, and we can get into all of it. I thought it had this odd, unapologetic superficiality to it that I it wasn't trying to be anything other than it was, and I found that actually quite reassuring in a weird way, because I don't know if I'm just getting older or if my taste has just gotten more diverse. It's still not my favorite movie of all time or anything, but I can laugh so much when I watch it for so many reasons. What about you?
It's not a great movie, but it's really entertaining. I'd say it's a solid 3 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't 3.5 is too generous for this, but 3 stars is good, because it is a popcorn flick. It is really fun, and I kind of get what you mean when you say that. Like it's a very sleazy movie, like just kind of in line with Paul Verhoeven's repertoire of just everything being over sexualized and almost this is probably tamer than most of his other movies, just in terms of sex and violence, because that's a huge theme for him. But there's also this thing that I noticed that I really adore, which is it's so bad. It was just the way he directs his actors, because everything is so emphatic. Especially think back to Showgirls with just Nomi Malone and her dance moves, and just that I see that choreography and in just the way that the characters in this movie move about it. There's this the scene where he's becoming invisible when he's on the table, and all everything's calm, and all of a sudden violent flip. Andre, don't post that scene because it'll get flagged on YouTube. But you just have Kevin Bacon's bare ass just right in your face, and then just flailing all over the place, and it's just that's just the way he directs things. It's just everything is so bombastic and in your face, and nothing is subtle at all with any of his movies. Especially this one.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because also I did see I'm not trying to be Tatum, but I did see for the first time I was watching it in HD, but I think I used to watch it on my laptop when I was researching for Fright Club, but I watched it on my big screen, and I saw the tip. I swear, I saw the tip of Kevin Bacon's penis.
I saw it too.
And on one of his turnover, thrusty kind of.
Yeah, no, that very scene. Yeah, and then you also see, which I'm sure was not real, but just when they have the infrared heat sensors, because then it's just like flopping out.
It is full on flop, 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 flop.
But I mean, like, that's old hat for him. He did Wild Things.
Oh, yeah.
I think that
He's
was the
been naked
big. Yeah, that was like the big thing.
so
Like,
many times.
everyone in junior high was just like, yeah, Wild Things. Like, Kevin Bacon shows his bacon, and that was like. That was like the main narrative of the movie. We're just like, well, what's the plot about? And it was like, I don't know. There's like tits and peen, and he's definitely like, oh, because his character is just so slick in this. But he's just like, because he drops the robe first, and they're just like looking at him. He's just like, ladies, it's science. Okay, it's just like, and the fact that he, like, once he's invisible and he's like playing around with them, like jokingly at first, and just sort of like rubbing past them, and they're like, oh, he touched me, and it's just like, he's bare ass naked, right? He's just rubbed his penis across.
I bet it's not the first time for any of them.
Yeah,
but
like,
he's not the most scrupulous character to begin with.
He's not the most scrupulous, but they're so forgiving of his behavior through, and we're gonna get into this.
Okay,
it's just, I hate every single character in this movie. I'm even like, I'm thinking ahead, like, we're gonna have a lot of trouble with the cherry on top in this.
I have an idea already, but we'll get there.
Okay, I'm excited to hear.
Okay, good. But in terms of what you were discussing with Sebastian, another thing that I love is I think the most spoken word in the entire movie is Sebastian's name. Like, they say it. If you're playing a drinking game where every time they say Sebastian, you're going to be wasted by the end. Don't do it with like scotch or anything, or Everclear, anything that's like got a high proof, because you're going to be passed out. You're not going to enjoy the rest of the movie. Do it with beer or something like that. You know, so drink responsibly, kids.
Yeah. It's almost like
drink responsibly, adults.
It's like the Carol Ann to Poltergeist, of just like her name being the most.
Poltergeist 3. There should be a supercut of just them saying the name Sebastian in Hollow Man.
Yeah.
That would be great. I'd love to see that. Somebody get on it. Put it on YouTube. I'll repost it, I swear. But also, I mean, I wanted to know, because one of the things that like actually really, really hooked me and that I completely forgot about with this movie was the score. Jerry Goldsmith's score.
That's probably like the best.
The opening credits happen. I know, it was amazing, and I couldn't remember. I didn't remember who it was, but I was just like, oh, this is just the opening credits are going on where they have that weird kind of alphabet soup meets the real credit. Why are they side by side? Why are they? I didn't understand that, but
I liked it though.
Got kind of like this kind of DNA. Yeah, like alphabet cereal like thing going on. But what really made me like it was the score, and I was waiting to see who wrote the score again, because I wanted to just find out in the credits, because tension. And then when it said Jerry Goldsmith, I was just like, oh, of course, I love Jerry Goldsmith's scores by and large. So that just told me, okay, so that's something to really look forward to on this ride. Not that I was like, clenching as I was like getting on the ride, because I was just kind of like, okay, I can shut my brain off for about 2 hours and just let the movie happen.
I mean, as we know, the music in horror movies is an integral ingredient, and
can be,
what I like about this one is that it has like this very mysterious cadence to it almost. It's just like, it's science, it's just like and it's just like, something's going on here. It's like top secret, and we're in a lab. Like it was just very fitting. It worked with everything that was going on.
Yeah, glorious sweeping melodies that are also just kind of like, you feel like things are literally being musicalized to depict discovery over and over again. Just things like being uncovered, and I appreciate that. But it's also got this swell, this glorious. Again, it feels very kind of old Hollywood. Which that's what I wanted to say about when you were talking about Sebastian and the team's reaction to him and everything. Sebastian more than ever now, but I think I felt this back in the day, like 22 years ago, when he feels like product of a bygone era, even then back in 2000, but we were still kind of making those movies then. This is not necessarily an outlier of the rule-breaking anti-hero who there is no redeeming quality necessarily granted to him, yet people still feel motivated to tell his story, number one, to have characters blindly follow him, number two, and to, I don't know, to not really, to know that I guess ultimately he has to be punished in an old Hollywood, a very old Hollywood kind of way, where, you know, like even the Universal monsters, like, because they were, no matter how sympathetic they were or weren't, they were ultimately doing harm and killing someone at some point.
What?
So they need to be punished.
Okay, this is, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I've never actually seen the original Invisible Man.
Oh, Zach Cherry.
But
okay.
What's interesting is this sort of the trajectory of this the story of like just how they keep remaking this, because the most recent one, like you said, we're not, you know, this might have been the story, like his story that we're shown, but with with Invisible Man 2020, it's instead showing the perspective of the victim. So it's just like, we don't need to tell his story anymore. Like we've seen it. It's not important. And you bring up the term anti-hero because the movie like absolutely starts off like this is his story, and we are empathetic of his situation. But as it goes on, like he just becomes more villainous and repulsive. Where then it gets to a point and it transitions, and then we're following Linda, played by Elizabeth Shue.
Oh God, yes.
Love Elizabeth Shue, but fucking like this character is the worst.
Linda is probably the most entertaining idiot I've seen in recent times. And I just saw Halloween Ends, where kind of everybody's an idiot in that movie. But
I would argue that like people in Halloween Kills are stupider, but
maybe
we kind of take over at a certain point with her. And then the rest of the movie plays out, and then it's like the last act is like full on like slasher movie of Sebastian becoming the killer shark, the invisible killer shark.
Yeah, but again, like the killer shark, I mean, if we're gonna like kind of like cross cast like from Jaws is to as Hollow Man is to, I feel like we got the mayor or even admittedly Sheriff Brody, who, you know, has a lot of responsibility for like what happens to, and that's what drives him. I feel like an equal amount of responsibility falls on the shoulders of Matthew, and played by Josh Brolin, the beautiful Josh Brolin, and the beautiful Elizabeth Shue, Linda, because they are like the ones who basically, they don't open the doors for Sebastian. The doors are just open as a default for him. And if they aren't, he'll just kick them in without thinking anything of it. But they just kind of leave them open and go like, oh, that's Sebastian, you know, like that's just who he is. We'll even if we chew him out, we're not really going to affect any kind of change in the script, because we are going to hide all the truth from our team, and we're going from Sebastian's, you know, by extension, team, and just kind of like let him completely break the law and be irresponsible. And
I mean, well, first of all, like because you've said this before, just like there's like, you know, characters who are full on doing evil things, and then there's also the evil that people do by like almost like an omission of just like any sort of like morals or scruples or anything. And that's these two characters of just really knowing everything that's going on and being like, oh well, like boys will be boys. Until it gets to the point where they're just like, I don't think that this is, you know, a good idea, or just, you know, whatever the shit is that they say. But also, you bring up a good point, because like the entire movie, like most of the bad stuff in this movie happens because of those two characters and the lies that they tell and the secrets that they keep. Because on one hand, they're complicit in Sebastian's little plan of like using himself as a test subject without telling the Pentagon or whatever that is, and then keeping that from the rest of the team. But they're also like not letting him know that they're in a relationship, which is pretty much the catalyst for him flying off the handle. Like, had they been mature adults about it and like, you know, they're working together, they're dating, and just gone to him and just been like, just want everyone to know we're a couple. And it's like, because there's obviously some sort of relationship history between her and Sebastian that has been over for a while. Exactly. And also she had been like, oh yeah, so this shouldn't bother you anymore because we're not together, but now we're a thing. And then, you know, he might have like pouted about it and just been like, oh, what, I'm not good enough. But it's like this guy, because they've already got this like weird, like, there's this like triangle between them, even though like he doesn't know that they're dating, but it's just like this sort of like testosterone thing of just like, I can catch the gorilla first. And
right, the way he's introduced, like in direct contact for the first time with Matthew, because he does see him without knowing it's him over over Linda's shoulder when they're, you know, in bed together and everything like that, and he tells her, I broke through, or whatever that fucking moment is. And the first time we actually get to see them interact with each other, and they both know they're interacting with each other, Sebastian and Matthew, it's when they're chasing after Isabel the gorilla, because she's been getting more and more aggressive ever since they made her invisible and everything like that. And Matthew's kind of failing at handling, you know, managing the situation and like having it under control. And that's when I wrote down the two lines that really just give you everything about who Sebastian is. If you didn't already kind of know who he was, this will tell you everything you need to know. He's just gonna like, yeah, she's been getting more and more aggressive, and he just says, well, that's what tranquilizers are for. And I'm like, fuck you, you discompassionate man of science. It's just, I'm just like, that poor gorilla doesn't know what she's going through. You don't know why she's aggressive, and you're just gonna, well, we'll just tranquilize her. It's like, fuck you. Well, I mean, it's better than just shooting her, but god damn it.
I know I'm jumping ahead here.
And then the $10 says I nail her first.
Yeah, I know we're jumping ahead here, but while we're talking about the animals, there's like really no mention of the, okay, so like by the end of the movie, the entire facility is blown up. And there are hundreds, not hundreds, but there are a lot of animals down there. And they're all dead now. And there's like, at least like what would have felt right is if like before the explosion went off that we just like checked in with and just showed that they were still there. Because it's almost like, again, it's like an omission of guilt of just anything that you've done and like what you've caused and all of like the harm that it's done to like not only like your human team members but also like the animals that are there too. So I just feel like these people are just fuck them. You know, like Sebastian might be, you know, a piece of shit, but like he's a piece of shit because of them. And
they only enable his piece of shittery. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. That it pisses me off that those are like the final couple.
I know.
I almost
justice for me actually would have been if, I mean, I don't think the animals deserve to die, of course, but I mean, none of the people on the team deserve to die except for the triad that we're discussing.
Yeah.
But what would have been great for me, since we are jumping ahead, and we can always, you know, jump all over because there's so much more to talk about, but what would have been so much more satisfying for me as an ending, just to give me, but Paul Verhoeven is not this director. He's not this insightful or thoughtful as a director. He's much more sensational and much more about like, you know, you know, look at what I'm showing you, without being too gritty and realistic. It's much more like, ha ha ha! Look at this thing I'm showing you. Isn't it gross? That's how I hear him in my head. But what would have been much more satisfying at the ending for me is if they had a choice where they had a crucial moment where it can be something like on the elevator shaft or whatever, where they're all like holding on to cables or something, and one of them is higher than all the rest of them, than the other two, and Linda and it's either Linda or Matthew is higher than the other two, but whoever's higher shares a look with the comrade, you know, the other one, and they just kind of share a nod, like of understanding, knowing, cut the cord. Like, it'll kill all of us, but if you don't kill all of us, then all of us are going to survive, and he's going to get to the surface. So he's our problem. It was our responsibility. Like like he had responsibility too, but he is not reliable at all. So let's atone for what we've done by offing ourselves and him. And then they all fall down the shaft into the fire. That would have fucking rocked.
Yeah,
I actually would.
Honestly,
I'd like even more.
I don't even need that. But you remind me of like a funny bit when they're confessing to the general or whatever that character is. And they go to his house, and we don't really see the conversation. We just see like the tail end of it when they walk out, because we're sort of seeing Sebastian's POV, and they're like, is there anything else we can do? And he's just like, no, but you better clear out your desks, because I don't think you'll have a job for much longer.
Right.
And then and it's almost like, because these two characters, they're very much like teenagers. Like, that's what I get from them. And Linda turns around, she's like, well, for what it's worth, we're really sorry. And he's just like,
right.
Like, yeah, well, oh shucks, that's too bad. And there's even a bit
so
like
benign.
at the start of the movie, like when we were first introduced to Matt and Linda, because that's when she's on the Skype call or whatever with him.
Yes.
The camera computer call, whatever it was called back in 2000, and
who knows,
she turns around like after they disconnect, and he's still like in bed sleeping, and she gets on the bed and she starts jumping up and down like she's a fucking kid. She's just like, wake up, Sebastian cracked reversion. And there's another moment again, like later on, when like after Sebastian's got out and he's stalking her, because he's like gone up the fire escape and he's looking into her studio apartment. That was another thing. It's just like, I'm pretty sure you can afford a bigger place than, like, her bed is like right in the entrance of the apartment. But I just loved how she's, again, like, everything's over sexualized. She's walking around in her apartment with like this blouse that's like barely done up. I don't even think she's wearing a bra. But she's got these like loose fitting jeans on, and then Josh Brolin walks in and she like jumps up into his arm. She's got her legs around him, and then just like is like pulling off her pants, and you're just like, who is this character? Who are these people? They're literally teenagers.
Well, she's also a woman in a Paul Verhoeven movie who has no power or agency of her own. So naturally he's going to... I thought of Nomi Malone from Showgirls a lot when I watched, and that's the Elizabeth Berkley part for anybody who doesn't know. The lead of the showgirl of Showgirls. And to watch Showgirls or Hollow Man as kind of like, I don't know, an example of womanhood, shall we say? Womanhood in the workplace, maybe? I don't know. Or in the modern world. If aliens saw Showgirls or Hollow Man before they ever interacted with us, I have a feeling they'd expect that women are these slurping, slinky, sex-driven, you know, but really, really giddy, jump on the bed type of beings that can be easily kind of like conquered with by seduction, by way of seduction. All you have to do is like assume that they're into you, and they'll be putty in your hands. It's so disgusting. But I mean, because even like Elizabeth Shue's body language when they're all having their victory lap dinner, and he's on the balcony, the team is all kind of like trading war stories around the table and whatnot, and laughing over champagne, and she just kind of like, oh wait, where's Sebastian? And then she finds him, and there's this shot of her walking away from the camera where her hips are like in one time zone and her rib cage is in another. And she's just, it's the weirdest. And all I can see is Paul Verhoeven directing Elizabeth Shue before they shoot the scene. You know, like, walk sexier, you know, real slinky, like, you know, real, just you swivel those hips
I imagine,
back and forth.
I'm thinking of, like, True Lies with, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger just being like, do it slowly. Do it sexy.
Yes! and she's poor Jamie Lee Curtis on the pole, but only doing it less successfully. And there's so every moment like the ones you've described and the one I just described, like anytime she does something like that that's kind of like remotely sexual, I always one thing that I really admire about, and this isn't maybe an odd thing to admire Elizabeth Shue for, because I think it's a terrible performance. Like if we're looking at, you know, kind of like examples of her talent as an actress. Like I've seen Elizabeth Shue, you know, master moments on screen, especially in recent years too. I love watching her. But I do have to say in this movie, I'm almost impressed with her just kind of throwing the performance away, because it is not. There is nothing about this depiction of a woman that is connected to any kind of sense of reality. So I love that she just kind of thought, well, I'll just do the thing on the page. I'll just do what he told me to. I'll have fun with it, but I'm not going to infuse any kind of anything personal or anything really specific. I am just going to play broad. I'm going to speak louder if he wants me to, speak faster if he wants me to. I'm going to slurp across the the balcony if he tells me to. I'm going to jump on the bed to the highest note
sometimes
that I can.
you watch like interviews and stuff. Did you see anything of her? Just
I really wanted to before this, but I didn't get home in time to do that research.
I just wonder,
like, watching it before.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, what she said about it then, but also, like, what she would say about it now. Because I feel like she definitely has to be in on the joke. Like, there's no way that she could have taken this one seriously. Because there's so many things
reeling from his direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things that she does in this movie that are just, like, so questionable. But I had a few written down. But, like, even when because he gets very physical with her, Sebastian, like, when he's invisible, and she's just kind of like, okay, like she's not being like a damsel in distress, but she's also just like she's just allowing it to happen. She's just like,
she's just standing there stoically. Like,
she's almost and at a certain point she's almost like goading him on. Like she's just like I forget what the line is, because he's just like, you know, it used to, like it could have been like you and me or something, and like now you're like fucking some other guy, and she's just like, yeah, what part of that like bothers you the most? Like, so, like they're full on antagonizing him. Like they know he's dangerous, but it's just like whatever. Yeah. But I also love the fact that like during all of this, because like from the get-go of him being a test subject, there's almost like this bond between them where it's almost like, are you, and it's again like when you say like when she slinks over to him, like there's still like she's almost like, not that I want to say like she's projecting herself, like just like, yeah, like I'm into you or whatever, but she's full on, she's sleeping on a chair next to his bed, like she's obviously showing concern about him. When he turns invisible, she like puts her hands down to like feel him, and he's like out at this moment, but she's like puts her hands on his chest, and then she's like moving her hands down to like his pelvic region, and I'm just thinking like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your hands?
Bitch, everyone can see you. Yeah.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, no,
and she does that a few times. There was like another time, like later when they think when he has like gotten out, but he did like the whole camera thing, like from the bus in Speed, and she just like goes over and she's like, I don't know if he's in the bed, but I'm gonna like put my hands down right where his dick would be, and that's like that's the whole thing. Like,
oh, that's him. That's him. When she feels this.
Like what? So it's kind of hard to make. It's kind of hard to like make an argument for her because she's literally like she's doing all this stuff that's just like, Linda, like, what the fuck, dude? You know? Well,
because I mean, if you're taking it seriously, like, you never really know where Linda stands on anything because I'd almost like you could so infuse like a toxic quality, especially into Linda, just because of the gray area she seems so comfortable sustaining. Like, she is the least proactive character. Everything she does is in reaction to Sebastian, and that's another element we didn't discuss about just like her relationship, if you can call it that, with Matthew. Every conversation they have finds its way to being about Sebastian. So it's a non-relationship. It wouldn't exist. I feel like if he, I think they broke up after the movie. I think they found their way to the surface.
I hope so.
And they kind of realized they had nothing to talk about anymore now that Sebastian was gone. Maybe they mourned him together and got through their grief, and then once they kind of like were ready to move on, I think they were ready to move on.
And they probably mourned him. They probably talked more about him than like any of the people that of the
or
team.
the animals. Yes.
Yeah. There's another thing she did too, like when Matt gets the whatever that is, like the metal rebar, I don't know what it is, but like after he impales the one guy, but he like swings it into Matt, and then they're locked in that freezer, and she's just like, she's looking at the wound and she full on like sticks her hand in there thinking like, what do you do? Like, okay, you're a scientist, but you're not a doctor, and I'm pretty sure that like sticking your hand into like a fresh wound like that, and she's like, it doesn't feel like any organs have been like damaged. But really get in there real deep. Like, feel the organs. Like, are they like
intact?
Let me just poke around in there. I don't know.
Let me rearrange your kidneys so I can reach your pancreas. I don't know where they are.
But then that's where the movie is just like, no, she's smart. She's brainy. She's gonna figure out how to use this magnet and like open this door. Yeah, just like when the script needed her to be smart and get out of the situation, then it was just like, okay, do your thing.
Again, if she were a sympathetic character, because I didn't know, I forgot. I've seen this movie I don't know how many times, but I forgot that she built essentially like a magnet to move that what I don't know what you call it, but whatever that seals and locks the other side of the door. So she builds this magnet on the other side of this giant metal door so she can open the lock from the other side, and it works. And I'm just like, oh wow, that is kind of badass, but it happens way too late in the movie for me to root for her. She is fucked up so much by then, and also just been railroaded voluntarily much by then. Yeah, way too little, too late.
Literally, like every character in this movie is a petulant teenager. Just to like get back to that thread, like nobody has the emotional maturity to be doing what they're to have this position, this like government position. Like none of these, like whoever is involved or whoever was like in charge, I guess like the guy who was like the one that he killed in the swimming pool, like he should be, if he was still alive, he should have been fired for hiring all these people, because these are the most irresponsible, reckless, immature grown adults that could ever be doing what they're doing. Like, I do not trust these are people who are doing stuff for like the US military. Like, I don't trust any of these people to do a competent job at anything. They're like, I'm scared for whatever project they're working on.
Agreed.
Not that I think that like this character is redeemable in any way, because she also is kind of an idiot, especially by the end. But I almost like kind of wish that Sarah was the final girl, as it were, just because she's sort of like, she's presented as the one who just kind of sees through his bullshit the most. Or even if she doesn't, like, they all kind of see through the bullshit, but she's the one that challenges him the most. And I think like up until the end, like when she, because even she had that moment when they're all like, I think when they find the body of, I want to say it's her name, Marcy.
I didn't learn the names of the rest of the team.
Once they see that, like, oh, he's
Janice.
Janice.
Yeah.
That they're like, okay, now this is like shit's getting real, and they turn it back around on them. Like that's what I like, at least. Like they call out Elizabeth Shue, Linda, and Matt, and she full on like smacks her. Yeah. And I love that moment. I'm just like, that's the kind of like energy I needed in this movie. But then she turns into the biggest fucking idiot, because like they find what's his face. I forget the actor's name, because he had like the neck when he's like thrown into that thing, and he's bleeding out in the corridor, and she's just like, I have to go get blood for him. It's just like, I think that he's fucked. Like you could probably write him off and like think about yourself. Like that's
Carter.
Like, yeah, Carter, the actor's name I forget, but it's
Greg Grunberg.
Right. But she's like, you know, that if it was a final girl, they wouldn't be thinking about like, oh, I'm going to go back and like get blood and save him. Like I'd be thinking about like, how can I protect myself and the people who are still alive? And she just like, she throws all of that like logic and common sense to the wayside to run back and just get these like this thing, like all these blood bags and then the trank gun on top of that, just like, oh, I'm gonna get it, gets locked in there or whatever, and then she proceeds to open up every single one of those bags save for one, to dump them on the floor around her so she can know that if he comes walking towards her that there will be footprints. But she doesn't even put it everywhere. She just puts it in like one spot.
No,
because that's
exactly,
yeah, and he's behind her at that point anyway, so it was like all for naught. And I'm thinking like, you basically went to get this blood to save this guy, which now you've wasted. And then she takes the last bag and she just throws it on him. It's like, I cannot, like in any good conscience, like root for you at this point. Like you got what was coming to you for being stupid.
I also wondered, why did it take them so long? I think just as I was wondering about it, like I think it was when Sebastian escaped the first time in his mask and everything.
Yeah.
They just as I was wondering why, because they were out looking for him, but just bare-eyed, you know, and I'm just like, okay, this is really stupid. How long is it going to take them to get those like infrared, you know, body temperature glasses or whatever, those Predator vision glasses? And I think it happened like literally in the next moment, but then they kept forgetting they had them, or they kept going like, oh, you know, now the room's all steamy, so these are like, you know, like no help at all, so I guess I'll take them off and throw them away. It's like, no, you like put them on your belt or in your pocket or in your...
Even in the scene before that, because that was right before the guy Carter got thrown into the thing that like cut open his neck. But they like, because he almost bumped into him and he was going to shoot him. And he's like, no, it's me. And then they're like, shit. And then they both put the visors up. And they're like, where could he be? Like looking around and just like, I don't know, maybe you should put them back down and you'll be able to see. And they just constantly do that. They like put it up and put it down. And it's like, okay, you know he's there and he knows that you're there. So you at least, you know, can track each other. You're just looking for that third body heat signature. And they're like, these are not smart people. Again, which questions like, how are they scientists? How are they working for the government?
Janice does probably the smartest thing out of any of them concerning like those thermal goggles, because she actually, when she's on the toilet and she starts to sense there's somebody in the room, what does she do? She puts them on to make sure she's alone, and keeps them on while she's peeing.
What kind of a bathroom is that where there's not even like partitions,
communal,
or like enclosures, like in the like for the toilet just sitting there? I imagine there's probably like a row of toilets, and then just like everyone just like, we're just gonna be doing our
I guess they wanted
together.
to make it look like. It's what I imagine like toilets look like on a space shuttle or something like that. But I know that's not true, because you probably have to do it in a tube or a bag that has a suction device, right?
Maybe, yeah.
But anyway, it's just really weird. But like, but that's again, odd design choice, but it does kind of reinforce the blurred lines, the boundaries that are non-existent in the workplace. You know, the kind of the bar that Sebastian sets that everybody seems to kind of just cotton to. Like, even though Sarah pushes back more than anybody else in that team, why doesn't she quit? Why didn't she? I mean, and also that's a real sexist thing to ask.
I think that well, because like with her, I just sort of get the sense that she's there for the animals. Like she's doing it for the animals, which might have even been like, that would have been a good reason to make her the final girl, final person, because you're at least like, maybe she'd be like, okay, I'm gonna save the animals or something. I like cared way more about the animals than anyone else. But there's so the Blu-ray that I have is I guess the extended version, because the regular movie is a little bit shorter, so there's added stuff. So after he kills the dog, she comes into work, and this is all stuff that was removed, and she finds the dog and she goes and like confronts him about it, and he's like, I don't know, I've been sleeping in this bed all night, like check the camera, which has been rigged by him already. And there's this whole bit where she's like, because it's never brought up, I think someone says like, oh, he killed a dog, and it's just like, we don't know that he did that. But in this they like, she's like, no, it had to be him. Like, who else could have done it? Who could have gotten to the cage? And there's literally a scene, and again, this makes Linda look like an even bigger asshole, because she basically dismisses Sarah's concern about the whole thing, and she's just like, I think it's fine. Like, he didn't do it. It's, like, which makes it all the more frustrating, but also makes it all the more satisfying when she does get smacked by her afterwards. But the thing is, that, like, regardless of like all these issues as they were, I still like, I don't want this movie to be altered in any way. Like, this movie needs to be exactly what it is. Like, I would be upset if they made any changes to it, like, or had they.
And that's actually something I can't say about Randy Meek's favorite horror movie, Showgirls, because I will say tonally there's a sexual assault scene in that movie. For anybody who hasn't seen it, that is not really on par with the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie is trashy fun, and that particular part is not earned, and it's exploitative, and it I don't know. It just feels like
you're talking about Showgirls.
In Showgirls, so Paul Verhoeven loves sexual assault, but anyway, so in that movie, like it doesn't work. Whereas in this movie, it happens, and I don't like that it's happening or anything like that. But because it gives me just one more reason to sympathize with Sarah, because she's a victim of this. And what is the first thing that she says when she wakes up and realizes that her top few buttons are open after she's had this sensation on her breasts? She's like, Sebastian. And I'm like, fuck, she knows exactly what is happening. So I agree with you. It would have been,
I think there was another,
it would have been great if she
I think there was another deleted scene where because it was like like the next day when Linda comes in and she says like, I think he got out, or like he came in here, and they're like, are you sure, or something. Like, again, it's just like making excuses for him, or just being like, I don't know, like that's maybe they did delete all this because it was just like, it made Linda even like less sympathetic than she already was. But there is the other scene of the neighbor, the woman across the way, and that's cut out of the, like, there's an extra scene, and that's part of the extended cut where it should, like, for the longest time, because when I first saw it, I was just like, oh, so did he murder her? Because you never check in to see like what happened to her. You just kind of see Linda when she comes into Sebastian's apartment, and you can see her standing in front of the windows, and there's that apartment across the way, and nothing is happening there. You don't see anything. But in the extended cut, there is a shot following that, and you see her. She's like lying in the bed, the neighbor woman, and just like traumatized and crying as Sebastian walks away, and then he looks over, and he sees Linda come into his apartment across the way. So it just like shows like he didn't kill her, but she's probably now like traumatized for life. This is like the entity, and it just like carries on with like Linda looking for him with that just like, where can he be? I'm looking at, like, he's not in his apartment. Like, there's the one, like, where she thinks that he's in her apartment, where she throws the sheet over.
Yes.
And it's sort of, there's like a peek of like, is someone's head there? And it's just like, no, it was just like a little trick that they did.
Right.
Yeah.
I that particular sequence, oh God, I like talk about like getting under your skin and just being like, ugh, like making my skin was crawling. It still crawls when I watch that sequence, but it's still more palatable than watching the assault scene in Showgirls for me, because we don't actually see the assault. We kind of get all of the horrible looming, build up toward it, and then all of the aftermath from his perspective, which is actually pretty disgusting all on its own. Just hearing him talk about, like, because also the thing that bothers me the most, well, not the most, but I mean, but a thing that like kind of like just pounds, the wretchedness into it, is how into whatever the story is, Carter is. Like, all he wants to know is like, so did you mess with her? Did you? And I'm just kind of like, you're a little too antagonistic. Like, the opportunism that you're seeing as a benefit to being invisible tells me you're not really all that far off from engaging in that kind of behavior.
Yeah, well, he was very encouraging. He almost like drew it out of him, because he wasn't like, Sebastian wasn't forthcoming with the information. It was almost like he was almost proud of it after the fact, when he realized like, oh, I have an audience for this now. Like, I can tell this guy not everything, but I can tell him like enough, because it's like, he's obviously chomping at the bit to like get the dirty details, and just like, did you mess with her? Like, what did you do? Like, please tell me you messed with her. And it almost like makes you think that, is Sebastian like just becoming what he is this an effect of the invisibility or the serum, or is this just like inherently like people are bad, but when they're given the opportunity, that badness is just amplified, and they can get away with doing shit? Because I have not seen the original Invisible Man. I don't know what the story is with that character, whether it was just like the just side effects or whatever. But here, I mean, I would lean more towards just like, because I mean, Sebastian is kind of shown to be like, he's just a piece of shit from the start of the movie. So it almost makes me wonder, like, what would Linda's thing be if she became invisible? Because there's even a line when he's messing with her when she has the Coke can, and he's like moving it around, and it's all like playful, and he's like, you have no idea how fun this is, and she says, well, I'm sure I'll get my chance. Like, so you're gonna go invisible next? Is that like the plan?
The Hollow Woman, that should have been the sequel. I would have seen that. Oh my God, where Linda just fucking loses it and Matt's like reeling from it. That would have been a great sequel. Oh, I would have seen that.
And when you say great,
anyway.
I know you mean terrible. But
terrible, but I would have seen it in a heartbeat. I still want it to happen. Bring back Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Shue for Hollow Woman. I would still pay money to see that fucking
There
movie.
are 10 people in the entire world that are asking for this movie.
And I'm one of them. Yeah. I'm 5 of them. But anyway, no, but it's interesting because the question you just asked is actually something that I wrote down because I won't give it away if you don't want me to. Because also I have a vague recollection of the specifics of how exactly it goes down in the original Invisible Man from the 30s. But I know that Claude Rains, all I know is mental acuity and the loss of it, or just kind of like a distortion of a person's mental apparatus always seems to factor into cinematic stories of people becoming invisible. Like there's definitely like the what's the word I'm looking for? The I don't know, the anonymity, I guess, or, you know, just like the covert angle, like the fact that like you can get away from get away with things without people knowing, or with people not knowing exactly what is happening to them, even if they have like an idea, something's fucking with me, what's happening. But I just wondered what the connection is between invisibility and, I guess, mental illness in this movie, because I had the same question. I was like, we know Sebastian's not a great guy. We know that he has no problem ogling a woman who is, granted, she's changing in front of an open window. That's her right. But I don't know, the fact that like what does she do? Draw the curtains the first time we see it in his little opening
Both
scene
times,
in his apartment, and he just goes, damn, or whatever, because he wanted to see the whole thing. But I wonder. That's the question I would love to see Paul Verhoeven, and who wrote the screenplay for this, was, because I know he directed it, but the writers are Gary Scott Thompson and Andrew W. Marlowe. It looks like Gary Scott Thompson wrote the story, and the screenplay itself was written by Andrew W. Marlowe. Of course, it probably went through several hands, I would imagine, throughout production. But I would want to hear them speak to how much of this, and maybe that's what they want. They want us to wonder how much of this is the actual Sebastian just coming through, and how much of it is the disintegration of his sanity.
I don't think, but that's the thing. I don't think the question is ever really posed in a way.
Not really.
Yeah. And not even in a way that it's just like very subtextual. It's just like, it's just not there at all. Like, it's just, you know, he's 1 minute like an anti-hero, like he's a rebel, you know, he's slick, he just like marches to the beat of his own drum, and then the next it's just like, you know, what is the line he says? It's just like, you know, you'll be surprised what you can do when you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror, or something like that. So it's just like, there is the idea that like, you know, you become this person when you know, you don't have to face the consequences, or just like your own morality. But really, like, he's presented as just being this unscrupulous person from the beginning. So it's, you know, had they made him a more sympathetic character, then that might have made the characters more interesting. Because like, I think like as it goes, like the characters are so one note in this, like that like if there was something that could have been fixed, is to just have one character, even one character, whether that have been Sebastian or like a character like Sarah, just someone who can add a little more depth to the story. That's really my only complaint, if I had one, of something that could have been changed to make this more enjoyable.
Yeah, no, that said, there are two questions in particular that Sebastian asked that I answered out loud while I was screening the movie. And one of them was in the scene with Linda, where I think it's the moment that you alluded to, where she says the line of like so what bothers you more, that I'm seeing someone else, or that, you know, or that whatever, that it's not, whatever the fucking question is. I don't remember that. But I do remember like he's pinned her kind of against, I don't know, the door or the wall or something at one point. And I can't remember if he kisses her, but his mouth is like close to her and he's like breathing on her and stuff like that. And he asks her, how does it feel? And I think she says something like a little too familiar or something like that. But what I said before, I had to rewind it because I wanted to hear what she answered. But I answered non-consensual.
Well, he like full on puts his like hand up her skirt,
right?
Because that's when she's like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Like there are no boundaries here at all. Like it just like, but like, again, she just comes back to work the next day and it's business as usual. It's just like no talk of like the assault. And I like, granted, she's kind of put herself in a corner here, because she's like, her job and everything is on the line as much as his, that you know, there's now a point where they have to be secret about this. Like she can't come forward and just be like, oh, well, he harassed me, because then be like, how is he invisible? Why would you do, like, you know, they could go to jail, you know, there is this angle of just like, we're in it just as much as him, But again, it's just like the conversations that like her and Matt have that are about Sebastian are never really about like the predicament that they're in. Like maybe it becomes more about that like towards the end when they're like when it turns into like slasher fest. But up until then, it's more just like, oh, because it's still like that like dick measuring contest where he's like, I can figure out reversion. Like, you know, I did the connection. I did like, I figured out the B and the C to the A, B, C, D or whatever. And him like he's obviously jealous of whatever past relationship they had. And that's, you know, that's what they're talking about when they're in bed. And it's just like, okay, like none of this is like, he fully assaulted her, and this is the conversation that they're having in set. It's just like, no, you're smarter than he is. Like, you're like, don't worry about like, I'm more attracted to you. I like how you're thorough and you fit inside me better. Yeah, there's some cringe dialogue in here.
Yes. There's also, but you're making me think about like another question though that he asked that I didn't have an answer to. It's earlier in the movie when he's just looking at the invisible dog, and he just asks, "What's it like?" and and I feel like they're just kind of planting the scientist seed, like the innate curiosity. And I just wrote down Seth Brundlefly from, you know, Jeff Goldblum as the Fly. And again, that innate curiosity that kind of like finds him in the predicament he's in. And I'm like, why do I have more sympathy for Seth and what he does? I mean, you know, assault aside, but just like the pursuit of like what it is that he's doing versus like what Sebastian is doing. And I'm like, well, Seth wasn't betraying anybody. He didn't have a team who was, you know, like depending on him, who he was lying to and also coercing two other subordinates to him, but people who are still have like authority over the rest of the team into secrecy and just kind of glancing at each other, you know, over tables, like knowingly or whatever in awkward moments. And I just, I think that's a big like, part of it.
Yeah, I think
it's just the recklessness like and the fact that there's other. Yeah.
Because that's what it comes down to. Because it's not like the movie does not happen without his ego, and obviously Matt and Linda being stupid. But there's the whole thing. Like they crack reversion. They bring Isabel back, and they go to the Pentagon, and they're like full on like, you know, ready to hand over their research and all that, and then he lies to them just because he's just like, no, because that's the end of the line for us. Like that's like, you know, I'll peak if I tell them this and whatever. Right. Like I have to be the one to do it on my own, sort of thing. Like that's what it all comes down to. So he's almost like Freddy Krueger in a way. It's just like he has to have the blood and the glory, you know.
There's also the other question that he asked that I had an audible answer to. I had two, actually. Yeah. It was when he was invisible in his apartment looking at the window to his neighbor and everything. And he just kind of asked himself, who's going to know? And immediately, without thinking, I was like, you will. And she will. Mm-hmm. You know? And apparently neither of those matter to him at that particular point. And I think that's another thing that, again, like if we if we mind a little deeper into like, you know, kind of like what this particular Invisible Man movie or Invisible Person movie is trying to say, if it's trying to say anything aside from I'm a popcorn movie, maybe what it's trying to say is something that I always think about when I think about characters who kind of commit, let's say, to dark or destructive acts as a means to becoming kind of like what we know them. Like a lot of serial killer movies kind of present themselves in that way, where they start off one way and their wiring isn't quite right, but it's not until they start to get the gratification of like the kill or the pursuit, you know, that they're kind of like drawn to, that they start kind of like evolving. Like all of a sudden speculation and curiosity turns into action and violence and, you know, murder or rape or, you know, what have you, dismemberment, you know, all that kind of stuff, hoarding trophies from your victims. But those are the things. It's funny because I always feel like sometimes there's an argument to be made about like the slippery slope of like one act begets another act, and it's not just kind of like you turn on a dime and all of a sudden you were good one day and now you're bad, but it's almost like you're sinking down steps into a cellar of depravity, and the more steps you take, the further you are from the entryway, and the harder it is to get yourself out, to the point where there is no redemption for Sebastian if he survives this movie. You know, like he is a doomed, not even tragic, but doomed destructive figure.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that was probably the most deep I got thinking about this movie. But it was there. Yeah. Like that's an interesting question of the who's gonna know, because I feel like that's very, if you're a Paul Verhoeven character, that's a very everyman kind of thing to speculate about, because I think that's largely the world Paul Verhoeven makes movies about, is the thing that, well, why not? You know, what's keeping me from doing this kind of thing.
It's very much like these just characters at their most basest.
Yeah.
Because everyone in this movie, like they're just not only like so one note, but just like like they're written to be, it's like there's nothing really like that shows us this is a brilliant scientist, like other than people being like, you know, you stepped, and you know, just the William Devane, who's just like, you know, when you came into my classroom, you had this big ego, and like what, you know, like it just people just like basically bolstering him by just being like, well, he's really smart. And we don't really, all we really get from that is like he has this like Tony Stark moment at the very beginning of the movie where he's like, it has a Twinkie, turns around, and then it's just like all of a sudden like it comes to him and he's like, okay, gets on the keyboard. By George, I figured it out. Like all it took was like me to like pace around the room for a second and eat a Twinkie, and then I got it. It came to me, and that's because I'm brilliant. That's the writing.
I would have been interested. I would have been interested if we got more exposure to whatever it is that possessed him to write that you should be working or something like that on the ceiling. Is that what it's written? You should be working. So, yeah, and I mean that angle of him, like that's, I feel like we didn't get any kind of like exposure to it, because I don't see, all I see him once he's invisible doing, he's not working, he's just bitching about being a guinea pig, and there's not even like a conversation about how he feels immobilized because now he's the subject and not the scientist. Like that would have been interesting, but no, it's just about, you know, it's a sloppy narrative, because it's like all of a sudden it's setting up like this conflict of like, you don't know what it's fucking like, don't tell me, and he's just throwing, again, very teenagery tantrums about like how you don't get me, and then there was another thing, like what was that about? It's after Sebastian in his mask, he like throws a fit at Matthew in particular, and he just kind of like whisks himself away. And I think Matthew leaves the room, but before he does, he shares a glance with Linda. She just kind of glares at him. I have no idea what that moment was supposed to be. I can't tell if she's looking at him like, you should have just let him railroad you, or you know, or if she's looking at him like, I'll deal with it, you know, because he won't listen to you. I don't know what, but there's this weird subtextual thing that I think that moment is supposed to mean, and I'll be damned if I understand what it's supposed to be communicating between these two non-characters.
All I can say is they're trying to keep this relationship a secret, and they are not doing a good job of it at all. No! I love when they're like, when they find out, they get the call that he's like left the facility, and they're outside and they're like, oh, should we go to the lab together? And they're like, no, we have to go separate. And they start to kiss, and they're like, he could be watching. And then they stop. I know, but they're like, there's like scenes where they're like full on like at the lab, and they're like canoodling almost. Even like at the party before. Yeah. Also, I thought it was hilarious that at the party when they're all like doing the toast, and Josh Brolin is like, because he just had his hand bitten by the gorilla, and it's in a like a bandage or like a cast, and that's like the hand that he's using to hold up the flute.
Oh boy, that feels like a Paul Verhoeven note. Like, no, we want to see the cast, the bite. Like, you know, they worked hard on that. So, you know, lead with that hand. It's like, okay. I think I remember them all talking about like the way Paul directed them though was that he would get really interactive and even like kind of like perform scenes kind of like in the way he'd want them to perform it. Like to give them like a sense, like I want you to be very, you know, like of course with Linda, probably just kind of like, vibrant and pulsating and, you know, like rotating his rib cage, you know, like as he's trying to tell her how he wants her to play the scene. And she's
I'm
like,
just thinking it's
all
just
right.
like he gave the same direction that Quentin Tarantino gave Uma Thurman for Pulp Fiction for the dance. It's just like, you're kind of like Duchess from the Aristocats. And this is how you're gonna move.
I wouldn't be surprised. Although in her case, I wonder which cartoon he would have told her. Like she's kind of Duchessy, but she's also like, oh, now I just want to think like what Disney silly symphony is Linda based on?
I don't know.
But I love that also a little later during the climactic fight, if you can call it that. It's one of the that's one case where you're really, it's one of the one sequence after another. I'm just kind of like, God, this is so useless and great. Because I love that like Sebastian goes after Linda in that hall when she's kind of like assumed her badassery, and she can see him, like doesn't she have the fire extinguisher so she can see him and everything?
Yeah.
He still manages to get her on the floor and because I think water's coming down too, because she sets off the sprinklers, and he comes over and he puts his bare foot on her neck, and this is basically completely, again, I keep saying immobilized, but this immobilizes her, and all I can think is he's naked. You got legs, like kick him in the balls or like bite his foot. Like he has the most vulnerable. Attacking someone when you're naked and invisible, like you don't even have the shock of them being naked. Like, I mean, I can see somebody being naked and being corporeal coming towards you and, you know, visible, and that being daunting because a naked person coming at you, your natural, you know, instinct might be to just to kind of lock up and you lose your fight or flight. But with her, all I can think is like, oh, well, if she's such a badass, this naked man is spread eagled over her, you know, the lower part of her body. Like, pull up, kick over your head, take his other leg down, bite, like I said, bite his foot. You have nails, scratch his leg. Do something. Be proactive. Be an animal. Well,
there's also,
be an animal like him. I want to see the two of you.
That's where. You know? I mean, well, first he says the line to her when he slams her head into the pipe, but he's just like, "I always knew you were a bitch."
Oh God.
But then Josh Brolin comes and like sneaks up from behind and uses like the whatever weapon he used on him, and then he says to Linda, "Thought I'd save you for a change."
Right.
And,
oh my God.
And then they proceed to turn their back on him. They just leave the dead Sebastian, and then they do it again. After he gets electrocuted because he, like, you know, he's hoisted by his own petard in that moment when he strikes the crowbar or whatever into the electrical box, and they just see his body and they leave like, no, take the crowbar and stab it down on him, like just kill him more. He's not dead enough, you know, because then they could have got the whole elevator. I mean, the elevator shaft scene, like there's no way that anyone would survive that one. But the fact that he was even able to get up there, I don't even know how they did that, but just I get it. It's part of the popcorn movie that, you know, he had to come back for one last scare. But I just like, idiots. Fuck. How did this happen? And then that last exchange between them where I don't know what he says, but he just like kisses her or something. But she full on like reciprocates that because she has has a plan, and she's just like, she's like, go to hell, or, you know, whatever she says.
Whatever the fuck she says.
Yeah.
I also I have to say, to Paul Verhoeven's credit as a director, from the get-go with this movie, I know exactly how mean-spirited it's going to be, because the first thing we see is a poor little mouse scurrying into Isabel. We don't know Isabel yet, but we know that there's some beast in a cage, and that this beast, this invisible beast, is grabbing this poor little innocent animal and torturing it, you know, like still like kind of squeezing it so much that its little CGI eyes look like they're about to pop out. And then all of a sudden there are teeth and fangs and blood and everything. And it's just like, okay, I know exactly what movie I'm in right now, you know?
I think,
and
I just think that was
movie.
more so to showcase the effects of the movie. And you know what? I have to say, like, some of them hold up really well. Like, some of them weren't good at all, but there were certain things that did look really good. Like, I think particularly, you know, like, just like anything with like water, or just like, you know, water running off of his
Sebastian
body
wandering around
like,
covered in water and stuff.
Yeah, like really, because this was nominated for an Academy Award for its special effects when it came out.
But because also, I mean, even I don't think it's the most realistic sequence I've ever seen. I mentioned before the Isabel showcase, if you will, of her like anatomy book, kind of like, you know, like on a gurney situation. I'm not, it's not terribly arresting in terms of like, oh my God, it looks so real, but it is hypnotic and entertaining. Like I don't check out during that sequence. I'm watching like, look at the veins, look at the bones, look at the, like in a very elemental, like I grew up as a kid in the 80s with zoo books. I don't know if anybody else is gonna get that reference, but it was like a magazine. It was like little kid periodicals that you would get that centered on different species every time you got one. And in the halfway point, like the part with the staples through it, is like the centerfold. You see kind of like three or four different stages of the animal. Like you get like the way the animal looks, you know, head on, like just kind of like with its exterior. Then you get kind of like the way the muscle groups look. Then you'd get kind of like the way the organs and everything would be situated. And then you get basically like a skeleton. And it took me back to that, watching, you know, Isabel's anatomy just laying there animated, you know, and writhing. And also, I mean, I think there was some artfulness to both her and him on the operating table, as it were, just in terms of like the way they were able to kind of capture performance in a way. Because I don't know, I mean, that's how Disney started with its most kind of like far-reaching, ambitious cartoons, is just kind of like getting an actor to do something and basically kind of tracing over it, but then, you know, infusing it with expressions and, you know, little deviations here and there. And I think it's at that level. Like it's still hypnotic. I literally, I don't check out in either of those scenes, either the one with Isabel or with Sebastian on the table. I think it's still fun to watch. Yeah. So for that, again, popcorn. It gets the popcorn from.
Having said that, I mean, I'll be good if I don't have to watch this again for a while. Like I've filled my popcorn Hollow Man quota.
The only thing that had me hesitating actually about watching it was, the only time I had to watch it was Halloween weekend. It's not really a Halloween-y movie, you know. I mean, it's kind of horror by default. It is much more kind of like Hollywood sci-fi action with maybe horror illusions because of the Invisible Man subgenre, or the Invisible Person subgenre. Not like
well, there's some kills at the end that are like particularly gory.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I think because I'm never scared of it. There are plenty of horror.
That's true.
Movies
it's not a scary. It's not a
scary. It's not a movie. It's not. I wouldn't urge people to watch it on Halloween.
But I mean, for me, I know not so much for you, but for me, like, what is a scary movie these days? You know.
Oh, I know what to watch if I want to get mascara on.
Yeah.
But and this isn't it. This is what I watch if I just want to like. I would, again, this is another one we always talk about, the hypothetical person that you want to show a movie to.
Yeah.
This is kind of low on the list. Like, it wouldn't be in my top 20.
No.
But if I were like seeing somebody or made a new friend and they'd never seen it and we'd already watched like a good 20 or 30 movies together, I'd bring this one out. you know.
And you would just
okay,
like sit
now
there
you
like
already...
intent, like you wouldn't watch the movie, you would just watch them. Like just like
I
wanna
do
watch
both.
you.
No, I would do both. I don't know, because that's just creepy. Just like, I want to watch you watch the movie. Like, no, that's...
I just assumed that's what you meant every time you said you wanted to like screen it for someone and then just watch their reaction.
No, but I mean, I was raised that way, to like sit and kind of watch a movie as a communal thing, even if it's the community is between two people. But you know, just to kind of like everybody sit, whoever, you know, whatever the group consists of, watch the movie. But what is great is the takes you can do to each other. You know, the moments you find you're looking at each other and going like, "Oh my god," or laughing together, or going, "Oh shit, she's fucked." You know, like whatever it is, like it can be.
Yeah.
It can, you know, it can be a fun thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I've exhausted every possible thing I could say about Hollow Man.
All right.
Shall we get to the cherry picker?
Woohoo!
Let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we kill people. On purpose.
So, in terms of cherry on top, because we discussed at the beginning of the episode that this might be a challenge, I want to hear what your suggestion is.
Okay, I haven't read the rules in a while, so I can't remember.
I don't
Does
think
it have
we
to
don't
be human?
have rules for the cherry on top. Because
Okay.
remember we did Buddy the dog for
Oh, okay, good.
for single white
Because
female.
mine is Isabel, because I feel nothing but sympathy for her the whole movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
Isabel
cool.
is kind of like
Yay!
Isabel's like the face of like the representation of the animal faction
of the animal
lab.
community.
Yeah. Well, as the only one that's I think some of them had been like I don't think all of them had been turned invisible at that point, but like Isabel was the only one that was reverted back. So yeah, we can we'll go with Isabel because I cannot fathom putting any of these characters as a cherry on top. Like they're
No, not at all.
Yeah, no. I mean, maybe like the neighbor, but like why? Like it's just like I don't feel I don't
bad
feel
for
good like
her.
putting her as a cherry on top because she was a victim. Like that just seems wrong, you know? Like
And I thought about Janice too, but she didn't really get to do anything. She was maybe the smartest. She was the smartest of the group.
Who got
in
killed
what she
first.
Got to do.
Yeah,
but she did get killed first. So and also, who's gonna watch this movie and walk away going, "Hey, Janice is ace"? Like no. And Sarah again, another victim who did some great things, but also did some really stupid things. So yeah, it's all. I'm glad they're all dead. I want my
There
Hollow
needs to be
Woman
more
movie
people
now,
that were
so
dead.
Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin need to die in Hollow Woman together.
well, did we just give away the cherry picker? let's discuss last week's cherry picker because we
Let's do
covered
it.
Scriforum. We asked you who deserves to die the most in Scream 4. I chose Mr. Baker, who was the two-line English teacher, and you chose Robbie Mercer, the webcast guy. And across Patreon, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. By the way, we have Twitter now. Go follow us on Twitter.
You remembered.
I did. It was
Tweeter.
592 for Mr. Baker versus 517 for Robbie.
What? Well, I want to hear. I don't understand.
For what it's worth, though, the scales were tipped in your favor on Patreon, on like my Patreon, as well as on Instagram.
As usual.
Yeah, Patreon. That was like 16 to 32, so there was a lot like a lot more of Patreon, but Instagram was close-ish, and then I think it was just like the YouTube score. That's where most of the votes come in. And
I need
and
to
you
hear
can
the
all
comments.
you can all vote all over like in every single one of those. Like
Yes,
obviously like
please
not
do.
Patreon
Yeah.
if you're not a Patreon supporter, but you can cast
Become one.
votes several different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see what the good people are saying about the Scriforum characters. So Mendeo says the fact that Robbie uses the gay card to try and get out of dying and immediately folds because he just can't have Ghostface of all people to actually think he's gay gets him my vote.
Nice.
Robbie gets my vote, or sorry, Rashim says, Robbie gets my vote for pretending to be gay just so he doesn't get killed.
I love this.
Howl Puns says, Robbie, honestly, I have a hard time believing the group of friends in this movie actually like each other. I can see that
Vocal
too.
minority
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, none of those friends seem like they would be in a group together.
Very few of them. Yeah.
I think just like the
I don't know about
three,
none,
the
but,
three girls in
yeah.
the car at the beginning, but it's just like, what are they hanging out with Charlie, Robbie, and Trevor for? Like, it doesn't seem like a. If anything, Trevor seemed like probably like the most like not obnoxious person of the group, but he was like the biggest outlier for being like the ex boyfriend.
Yeah, for being a cheater. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a psycho, a stalker.
That's true. Millie Moo says, anybody or questions? Anybody else notice that Zach seems to pick a lot of teachers for the cherry picking? Wasn't his pick for Scream 2 a teacher? Zach, who hurt you?
Oh.
No, that was you. You picked Gus.
Did I? I don't know. Oh,
You
I
picked
did.
Gus,
Yeah. I forgot about that.
the drama teacher. I picked Josh Jackson as film
Yeah.
film
Oh,
class
that's right.
guy
That's
number-
right.
Yeah.
I'll never tell who
This
hurt
is the
me.
only teacher I've ever picked because this guy sucked. And clearly most people agreed. So I stand by my choice.
I still don't understand. I want to hear from the people who voted for you, though. I want to know.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Tyra says, I guess I'll pick Robbie, but my choice would have been Anthony Anderson's character, Perkins, for that creepy remark he made about Olivia and that corny fuck Bruce Willis line he made on his way out.
Fair. The first thing, definitely.
AJ says, dead at Mr. Baker, with a laughing emoji.
All right.
Okay. I guess that's I'm gonna take that as one for me.
Yeah.
Denise says,
But why?
Robbie, his line from I am gay and that he joked that he couldn't sleep with the students who had died is reason enough to die. Olivia Hammerstein says, I see people talking about Robbie having pretended to be gay, but he also thought of the death of 3 of his classmates as sad only because he lost the chance to sleep with them. He was all around very dehumanizing of others. He would be part of the incel culture today.
Absolutely.
Because he has that bit where he's just like, we are here at this like darkest hour where Olivia Morris has sadly been killed or has been killed, who will sadly never go out with me. It's just, and then he's like proceeds to, he says something like, he's just like, is our local legend coming to life? But he's like, he almost seems like really
he's happy,
enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. Gross.
Yeah. That's what I hate, those kinds of characters. Like, I on board with you. I mean, except other than the fact that I nominated Mr. Baker, just in the fact that like these are the characters that they write. Because I don't think that like the first 2 Scream movies there was nobody like this. Like that. I think Stu was probably the closest thing, but Stu is like, he's so much more complex than that. Like he's like immature and all that shit, but obviously there's a lot more to his character, where I feel like Scream 3, 4, and 5, like all those movies, they had to introduce like these characters who are just so 2-dimensional, where it's just like they're not even humans. Like they don't even feel like real people. And I hate that trend. I hope that they stop writing characters like this, like like Rebecca, like Sydney's publicist. Like Like, I don't want to see this shit. It's like, this is a cartoon at this point. Just me making an argument for your side.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's immaterial, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Nothing I do or say is immaterial. Rob Rangel says, Robbie, I don't think his day-to-day life is too exciting for vlogging / live streaming. The teacher didn't know there were murders that happened either. But he found out, and he was still a dick. Dylan Jameson says, Mr. Baker, honestly didn't realize that was his name, but he has to die, as I've had teachers like that in the past that try to push the students to think a certain way. Is that giving you a clearer understanding?
I guess, but over Robbie. So I don't know. Keep going.
Movie Maniac 03 says, I voted for Mr. Baker. What kind of teacher would think to make them turn in a paper on a town that has several people be the notorious Ghostface killer? I mean, he should know better, but I did honestly forget that Robbie was a character in this movie. He just seemed very much like a blah character. But, ooh, that town paper.
Okay, I mean, I disagree, but at least I kind of see where they're coming from. All right, next.
Whatever. Norma Panish says, "Oh, poor Robbie. I don't think he was lying and was probably coming out at that moment, but it didn't help. At least that was my interpretation. Who's Mr. Baker anyway? I still like Robbie more." Nobody's really like these are all like they're all like Mr. Baker by default or Robbie. Taylor Klug says, I vote Robbie for trying to play the gay card.
Right. Okay.
Chad Treverson, who even is Mr. Baker? Sucked. Robbie, just for giving Miss Gale a hard time for no damn reason. Invite her to the Stabathon.
Oh, yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
John Carlos McMaster. Oh, it's you're John Carlos. I wanted to vote against Eddie because I find Charlie to be... Wait, I wanted to vote against Eddie because I find Charlie to be much worse than Robbie, but Zach just couldn't sway me with his Mr. Baker argument. I am with Eddie, though. Watching Zach explain it all was pretty hilarious. All I want to do is entertain, so I did that much. AJR says, write-in vote Rebecca Walters. Fuck me, wow. She was a detestable character. Yeah. Well done, Alison Brie. I imagine the essay topic that was interrupted would continue why Woodsboro is the best place to leave and never come back to.
Somebody DM'd me that they would have chosen Rebecca, and all I could say was Rebecca's death would be no sadder than her life. Like, she's just a miserable person. So
she's too
killing her doesn't really achieve anything.
She's too, like, I don't want to say too, but like she's too entertaining to kill off when you have like a pool of like other people to
I've only loved her more and more as I've watched the movie over the years too. Like, I get more and more out of Alison Brie's performance, more joy, out of her treachery. Anyway, go on.
Matthias Egeman says, in the classroom when they set up the rules, they spoke about gay rule, and Robbie and Charlie looked at each other. I think Robbie is gay, and Charlie probably already knew that and killed him in anger because I think something have happened between them. Well, everyone is entitled to their headcanon.
Sure, yeah.
Thomas Baker says, Mr. Baker. Silent Saturn says, but what if Robbie really was gay, driven to compensate with toxic masculinity behavior by a conservative small town that wouldn't see an out and proud queer person for another 10 years? What if the essay was really about why Woodsboro is the best? Example on how the stigmatization and lack of support system for mental illness can lead to disastrous events. I feel like we need more information here. I go with the teacher for now because as a Virgo, I value tradition.
Oh, God. I don't know how I feel about that at all.
Well, I appreciate the very...
Thank you for sharing, though.
I appreciate the very in-depth, another very in-depth response from Silent Saturn.
Right. Totally,
Jeremy Huff says the whole "you're safe if you're gay" rule is stupid and does not exist. If anything, it's the exact opposite. Also, the whole constantly streaming thing was annoying. Sorry, Robbie, but there's no redemption for you. Michael Begley says, Mr. Baker, an essay on why your town is so great. Get the hell out of here, man. Kira Wood. Out of these two, I'll say Mr. Baker, but in my opinion, Charlie deserved to die the most. He sucked.
Okay. Okay, he did.
Rebecca Unbound Mallard. Robbie doesn't get my vote just because he tried to pull the gay card. First of all, he didn't succeed. Charlie still stabbed him. Second of all, he's what, 16? Literally everyone is douchey at that age. And thirdly, he didn't say it with any authority, just a meek little last-ditch effort not to die. Like, come on, as if no one would try that if they heard the new rule beforehand. Survival trumps all. My vote would be for the English teacher or Trevor. You're such a jerk in your everyday life. If you're such a jerk in your everyday life, that you being a red herring is so believable, Ghostface should just come and get you already. Dang.
Wow. Okay, disagree, but I applaud your pluck and your militancy.
All right.
So, cool. Okay, I have a better idea now why some people voted the way they did.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Zach Cherry.
So, for Holla Man. Holla Man.
Holla!
Honestly, I don't know where you're going with your vote if I choose mine, but I just want to put this out here that I've been mentally clocking just like who are the worst final couples in movies. And so far there are 3 pairs that I can think of, and now I've added a 4th one to that because after Julie and Ray and I Know What You Did Last Summer, terrible final couple.
Yes.
Who are the Jason Takes Manhattan? Those idiots. They suck.
Yeah.
They're terrible. Jesse and Jade in Bride of Chucky, and now Linda and Matt in Hollow Man. So you are entitled to your own nomination. I'm just putting it out there. It might be fun, but I'm gonna say Linda for basically everything that we described in this movie, being an enabler, being a weak ass final girl, making excuses for bad behavior and lying, like just the sin of omission and just lying and sneaking around behind really disastrous, just toxic people with like disastrous outcomes that you know are going to happen, but just sort of like, well, we'll play it by ear, you know? So this, basically we were saying throughout the whole movie, she should have died. So I'm gonna give everyone the opportunity to allow that to happen now.
Okay. Well, I will lay my cards on the table and say I'm not going to choose Matt just because I feel like he's guilty of everything she's guilty of, but less. I feel like
because the man doesn't get blamed as much.
No, but also because she's more in it. She has more of a connection to Sebastian. She knows him better. Also, we have more insight to her psyche as how she sees him. Like, she literally has a nightmare about him assaulting her and continues to make excuses for him and leave the door open for him, as it were, in, professionally, personally, socially, all of it. So
well, thank you for padding my argument for me.
Absolutely. I'm actually think because also I don't think when I think of this other character, I can't pit Matt against her because I think there's somebody who's even more deplorable in the movie, and I want to see. I'm actually really interested to see. I do believe it, but I want to see.
I know where you're going.
How people vote. Yeah, you know where I'm going in terms of like who they blame, and I want to know. So and this is kind of like off brand for us too, because I think ordinarily I'd be choosing her, but I'm going to choose Sebastian because he's the one who commits the atrocities and who, even though the doors are open for him or left open for him, he doesn't have to. He has a choice. He has, you know, I said it out loud, like he's like, who's going to know? And I'm like, you will. And that should be everything. And it isn't. I think he's just a disgusting human being who only gets more disgusting as the movie goes on. And I think he definitely deserved his death. At least we got that. Mm-hmm. So he's my choice. Sebastian Cain.
All right. So you can either vote for Linda McKay or Sebastian Cain. You can find the poll on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or Patreon if you're a supporter over there. I do want to welcome some new Patreon supporters. So say hello to Adam, Colleen Gallagher, Amethyst Frost, Victoria Medham, and Trey. Welcome aboard.
Applause
Thank
for
you.
everybody.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Just for anyone else who wants to support the podcast or my channel on Patreon, the entry-level tier will get you early access to all of these episodes like 4 or 5 days before we release them on the Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And also, if you sign up to the Freddy Krueger tier, you get access to our bonus episode, the Cherry Picker After Dark, which we release once a month. This month, we are doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 3. We've already done 1 and 2. Yeah. But once you sign up for that, you have access to all those old episodes. So, just putting that out there. Is that like the Cats version?
That's the Cats version of the opening theme, yes.
We, as well, our social media, like I said before, we're on Twitter now. Just search for The Cherry Picker. Our Instagram is at The Cherry Picker Pod. And if you are new to The Cherry Picker and you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to these episodes. The RSS feed link is in the description down below. And if you are listening to us and you want to watch us as well for whatever reason, you can find us on YouTube. So subscribe to us over there, The Cherry Picker. Also, I do want to thank Andre Felix, who is our lovely editor who puts all of these together for us. So thank you to him. And if you want to follow us individually on social media, Eduardo.
Oh, I thought you were never going to get to this. No. I'm so unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
Look for Edward is Truth, all one word or phrase run together, on Instagram and on YouTube, where you can watch me reacting to movies and shit. People like it, I guess. So that's nice. Yeah.
And you
How about you, Zach Cherry?
And you can find me on YouTube. My main channel is Zach Cherry, Z-A-C-K. And I'm on Instagram at Retro Bitchface, and I'm on Twitter at ZachCherry8. What do we got going on next week?
I know this week that what we got going on next week. I'm just excited about it. All right, it is that movie with the house on a hill that is haunted. But it's not the original movie, it's the remake that happened later with the black and red poster, House on Haunted Hill.
All right.
Is it the house or is it just house?
I think it's just House on Haunted Hill. There's no the.
Okay, because I think the original was The House on Haunted Hill.
I don't know. We'll find out.
They dropped the. They started early.
Yeah.
Where all the franchises are going now with, like, if you had a the, no the now.
Unless it's Batman.
Yeah, now it didn't have a the. Now it has a the.
Yeah. Basically, every franchise lost the because it now like Batman has the ownership rights to the. They basically copyrighted the word the. You can only have the.
Well, in Suicide Squad after Suicide. There was Suicide Squad and then there was the Suicide Squad. But that's still Gotham-y.
I don't know.
DC.
You're talking about
characters.
superhero movies, and I have no idea what's going on.
Fast and Furious.
Oh, I know that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be right back.